Hello again. It's actually New Year's Day, and it's another instalment of the Orion build, the Moebius 1/72 Orion. I've been working on this sort of over the Christmas break, and had a few bits to do to it to get the interior done. So it's really just an update of where I'm up to. First thing to show you maybe is this. I've turn it around the other way. I've put a hole in the bottom of the lower wing, and inside there's a box section, and there's a section of brass tubing. I've epoxied it in so it can't move. And the reason I've done that is so that I can insert, if I can get it in, a slightly smaller piece of brass tubing in the bottom. But if you look at the orientation of that, it's on an angle. So when this is displayed and this is in the base, this end, the wire feeds for the lights can travel up the tube. But also when it's in position, the wing, it's difficult to show on the camera, but the wing will be sort of canted over to one side. So it's a bit like the Orion's banking, and hopefully be able to see through the window and see the interior. I've still got the lights to fit on the wing for the wingtip lights and the navigation lights at the front here. But I'd say with this being so large, it's a bit difficult to show. The good news is I've got another camera to set up, so hopefully the next view will have a sort of distance camera as well, so we'll be able to do some better footage. I've also filled in this slot which was for the kit stand, and it involves you having to sort of build up the slot and then build up the detail of this panel here. I do wish they'd supplied that as a separate panel that you could maybe have cut a slot out of if you wanted to use the kit stand. Otherwise that could have just been glued on. As it is, I've had to build it up in sections. You can probably sort of see it there. It still needs a little bit of feathering in at the front, but I'll get there in the end. But that's more or less done now. So I showed these off in the last video, which were the decals that I got from Maganote. I think I called them Magnacoat last time, but it's Maganote from Japan, and they provided you can see where I've cut them out, all the sort of interior bits and bobs. So what I've done, I've been building the passenger cabin. Now there's 2 seats spare on this kit, because the seats that fit in the passenger cabin, there's also 2 for the stewardesses that go in the back of the cockpit, and you end up with 2 spare, presumably because of the way they were done on the sprues. So I've actually got 2 left over, and if I bring this up now, I don't know whether you'll be able to see that. If I put a piece of card behind it, hopefully that'll come into detail. Each of these has got a tiny grey decal on it for the TV screen, and then below it there's a set of switches, which looks fantastic, and it took me about 3 hours to apply them all because there's about 40 of them in total. But when you look at it in the cabin, and again I'll bring the card up, see if it'll focus, you can kind of see if I can get that at an angle where you can actually see it. Let's move my hand out of the way of the light. Any better? You can see them. You can see the screens there on the backs of the seats. You can't see the buttons because they're all in shadow. And ultimately, I think when it's all buttoned up and you look through the window, you're not really going to see anything, but they're there anyway. I know they're there. I based the colour scheme of the cabin on just some screenshots and the movie, everything seems to be like an off-white with grey doors, and there's a kind of slightly different grey shade to the end walls. You'll notice those two screens at the end, they've got two little tiny decals on that says caution weightless, which are going to be lit. I'll show you that in a second. And also it's very difficult to make out. Let me just find something to point at it, but let me see, where are we? Just there, there's a little tiny blue blob, which if you look at it very, very close up, and this isn't going to focus to it, it's actually a Pan Am logo, which is actually on the set. So but none of that will ever be seen. It was just for my own sort of amusement, really. I've made some minor modifications to this, in the sense I'd already shown the what I did with the when I cut all the lights out. Turned out I didn't need to do the side ones because they're not lit in the movie, so I've backed them with white styrene, so you just see them as white rectangles, and probably won't even see them at all once it's all together. I'm actually just going to put a piece of styrene tube here, white styrene tube, with an LED at both ends, sort of firing down the ends, so hopefully that'll throw some light out into the cabin and light the cabin. I'll see what it looks like that before I put the thing in. It might need a couple of additional lights, which I'll try and sort of hide behind seats and things, so you don't really notice them, but they're giving more light to the cabin. And on here as well, on the end, where those two screens are, which I cut out for the decals on the other side, I've boxed them in, and there's two SMDs in there which will sort of throw light around in there, and it'll reflect off these two sort of white styrene boxes, and then they're fed under the floor pan, and there's a piece of styrene holding them in place, and then there's the feeds coming out the back, which have all got to be connected up. Yeah, I've not actually had the lights running yet. As everything, I'll always test the lights before I go ahead and seal everything up, just to make sure that everything's functioning. The SMDs I'm using, I've had these, I don't know when I bought these, actually probably a couple of years ago. I think these are still going, Model Lighting Solutions, but they do these pre-wired SMDs, which are a lot easier than trying to wire them yourself, and they come with the resistors, and you can just sort of connect them all up, and these are warm white. WW means warm white, so they're not overly bright. So I'll see what they're like. I'll probably use the bright white in the roof lights, which will just sort of boost the light up a bit. So obviously this fits on top of there, eventually clips in, and as you can see, even just looking through there now, without it lit, you can't see anything in there. So I'm hoping that something shows up. The cockpit is quite compact. You can see the instruments there on the instrument panel. I didn't bother lighting these, and the reason being, I'm lighting the cockpit, but also you can barely see them through the actual windows, the cockpit windows. There's no side windows as such, it's just the front windows. So you'll sort of get an impression, but that's about it. And I thought there was no point in going mad with them. All these wires that are sort of flying around out the back, what I've done is I've planted an SMD. Let's just try and do something with this light a bit so you can see this. There you go. So I've planted an SMD between the sort of seat of the console. You just about see it there. And let's just point that out there. Where is it? It's there at the bottom. Let's try that thing with the card again, because that seems to get it to focus better. The light, really. There you go. That's a bit better. I do need to improve my lighting, to be honest, because there's too many shadows here. I need one of those overhead lights. I'll look to getting hold of one of those. But there's an SMD there that's going to throw light up into the cockpit. And also, I haven't glued the lid on yet. There's a sort of box section on the top, which has got another SMD, which is going to light the roof panels. And there's also two more, if you can see them, sort of mounted in those, well, right by the floor there. Now you can't see those when you look through the front window, but they will, you know, throw light all around inside the cockpit. And you can see, again, we can get that into the light. The back door's painted, you know, the seats are there. You know, so there'll be some semblance of something going on in there. But remains to be seen what's actually visible when it all goes together. So that's those, which again need wiring in. And then I also printed some figures off. Now that's the rough print. I had these figures from I sort of bought the files online to do figures for the Ares in 1/48, and these are the same figures scaled down to 1/100 scale. I think I mentioned before that the scale of the kit says it's 1/72, but the seats are nowhere near that, and these actually fit in the seats, and these are 1/100 scale. So it's the old story of, you know, the inside doesn't fit the outside, as a lot of movie vehicles go. So so these were like spares. I mean, if you're printing something this small, you might as well do yourself some spares. And these took about an hour to print. And then what I did, they show, let's get that background in again. I clean them up. Now I cleaned these up because they're so tiny. I cleaned them up prior to curing them, so they came off the printer, and I washed them and dried them, but I didn't cure them. And by doing that, the supports simply, you know, pull off or cut off very easily, and I was able to shape them to how I wanted them. And you can see there's a sort of standing stewardess, there's a seated stewardess, there's two pilots, the ones with the hands up, and then the guy at the front there, who's got his arm sort of down by his side, that's Floyd to sit in his seat, you know, with his arms sort of floating about in the 0G. Not really going to go as far as putting the pen in there, but you know, you get the idea. He was built from the Floyd figure for the Ares is eating out of a tray, and I cut his arms off with the tray, and then replaced his arms with arms from one of the pilots, and sort of repositioned them. So he's got one in his lap, and the other one's sort of hanging over the walkway. And the detail on them is very good. It's very difficult to see on this because obviously it just blurs the minute you go too close in. But the detail is excellent on these. However, again, it's one of those things, are you going to see them when they're in? I've no idea. But if you can just see the shape of a figure and you know, and it's lit, then so be it. I've got to look at the movie again to figure out what seat he was sitting in. I know he was in the right-hand aisle seat, but I think he's about 4 or 5 seats back from the front. So I'll figure that out. So that's about all there is to report. One thing I'm going to do in the morning, I'll do this outside. It's pouring with rain outside at the moment. I'm going to paint the outside of the windows and the interior here, because I want to mount some acetate in there. And I did a similar thing with the Moebius in that I completely finished the windows before any of the bodywork was done. And it means I can mask off the windows once they're all painted. So I can paint these, paint it, white, weather it, put the acetate in, then fill the window apertures with Maskol, and then mask off this section of window, and then assemble it and clean up the seams and paint the rest of the fuselage and the wings and everything. And then only when it's finished I can peel that off again. So that's the plan. It worked really well on the Moebius, and that was masked up for about a month while I worked on the rest of the exterior. The other thing I may do, I'm just looking for the part in here, is where are we? Because I've gone to the bother of detailing the cockpit, these panels in the cockpit window, they are actually quite flat. They're a little bit like the space shuttle, they're just like a flat window. Now I think I'll get away, rather than using the transparency in the kit, which is a little bit sort of thick and blocks your view, I may actually just put 3 pieces of acetate in here, and similarly I'll sort of paint the edges first. I'll be able to blob those out with some Maskol, blend all that in, sand it in, and then take off the masking, and you should be able to see inside. The only danger there is there's very little support in them behind, so there's a possibility that you may end up pushing the windows inside. I'll maybe look at putting some wire supports on the inside to stop that happening, so I can't accidentally push the glazing inside once it's all glued up. And I've had quite a lot of success with that in other models that are built, and it does look better with the acetate. I don't think it matters that the glass isn't going to meet the top of the frame. I'm more interested in being able to see inside, so I'll do that as well. And other than that, there's not a lot to report. I think now I've broken the back of this interior, I think it'll start coming together really quickly now, which I'm keen to do because I just want to get the thing built really. As I say, the stand is probably going to be solid, like a wooden stand, but painted to look like a monolith. And I've got a corresponding piece of brass tube here somewhere. There we go. So this is the same diameter as the one that's inside the bottom of the wing, and this simply slots into it like it's the next size down. So I'll build this into the wooden stand, then this can go slot into there, and it'll all be flush with the surface. And obviously I'll build a battery compartment into the bottom so I can change the batteries. And I generally run everything off 9 volts and just have one 9-volt battery in there. So basically the lighting is going to consist of the cockpit, the cabin, the navigation lights, and the engine lights at the back, and they should all run off a 9-volt supply, so that'll be fine. So that's another little job to do, but it's all starting to come together now, which is good. The critical thing was really doing these seats. Incidentally, the finish on the inside of this, basically I used grey automotive primer to prime everything, and then I misted gloss white over the top, and because it's only misted on over the primer, it gives this kind of satin effect, but it also means the primer is showing through these lines here, so it gives like a 3D effect. And I painted, I hand painted 2 grey strips down there to act as a kind of just like a shadow again. The interesting thing, unlike an airliner, there doesn't seem to be anywhere for overhead luggage, or presumably there's a luggage compartment in the back, and there's obviously quite a distance between the cockpit and the passenger cabin. If you look on here, there's the cockpit here, and the passenger cabin starts here. So there's this section here. I'm presuming that'd be a galley, like on a modern airliner, and the cargo section would be in the back here, and they put all the luggage in there. But I suppose you've got to remember that when this was made in the sort of mid-60s, airline travel then, it was very much, your luggage didn't really travel in the cabin with you. There was no overhead lockers or anything like that. People were still traveling on 707s and all these older Boeings, and it tended to be for the wealthy anyway, so they'd expect to have their luggage taken somewhere. So they just never thought that through when it came to building the interior of this. So so that's it. That's a quick update. I'm going to get on to painting these figures tomorrow. I'm not going to go mad with them. I'm literally just going to paint them in the sort of stewardesses will be completely white with a little blob of flesh for the hands and the face. Pilots, again, I think they're in white. I think I'll have to have a look on the movie. I don't think the cockpit in the Orion is red like it is in the Ares. I seem to recall it's like a normal sort of lighting in there. So I'm going with that anyway. So it sort of stands away from the Ares look. Yeah, I'll get onto those. I'll fit them next time. The next video, I'll have this all wired up and lit so you can see the lighting in it, and then hopefully the following video from that will be the thing together, maybe just putting the decals on or whatever, and doing the paneling on the outside. So as ever, thanks for watching, and look out for the next episode. Thanks.